On the slopes of Diamond Head, this is Kapiolani Community College. Kulia ika nu'u, strive for the highest.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Kuile Courageous Conversations. I'm Sheldon, one of the outreach counselors here at KCC.
And I'm Alfie, the other counselor at the Kuile Outreach Program. And Sheldon, awesome guest today.
Yes, as always.
But before we get started, we're talking earlier, middle school experiences. Yeah. What was an awkward or weird middle school, or maybe even a transition experience for you from middle school to your next path?
So it's funny. It's funny that we have a guest host here because he kind of knows part of my middle school story. Yeah.
No.
And so I grew up in a elementary school where it was dead center of a community, and so Manoa Elementary. So we just knew everybody because it's Manoa Valley. Then from Manoa, I moved to Stevenson.
Okay.
So Stevenson Middle, you have like many communities, and had to meet like these different communities. And as this person who like looks the way I am, went to Stevenson, I had no clue what was going on, super awkward, sitting in this hallway because I had nowhere else to go. And these group of guys just decided to teach me how to fight.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess something happened. They're like, "Oh, Sheldon, brother, you gotta hold up your arms," and they just started punching me. And so that was my introduction to middle school. How about you, Alfie?
Wait, so they beat you up, basically?
No, they didn't beat me up. And to this day, they're really good friends. Like when we see each other, it's like I feel they really welcomed me, not so much as a family, but within that community.
Okay.
So it was really cool. It was a interesting way to be introduced to. But I was like, okay, well, I know how to hold up my arms when they're swinging at me.
Okay.
All good.
Okay.
That's middle school.
So he was beaten up?
Not really. Just
Okay.
I was given tips on how not to get beat up.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
But
and then practice.
You gotta
practice.
Forever friends though, like
Okay.
through Stevenson, through Roosevelt, I went through Roosevelt afterwards, so it was great. Anyway, how about you?
Have you ever gone back to them and say, "Remember the time you beat me up"?
So one of them is actually a prison guard, so I don't
Okay.
really talk about it.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
But to this day, like I saw them at this one event, like super gentle, kind people, just super intimidating.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm so fortunate that they welcomed me. Anyway, how about you?
You know, I went to the same school from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade, and we only had literally two buildings. So the lower grades on one side and the upper grades on the other half. And the transition experience was just moving across the field to the other side. And
Lucky guy.
Yeah, I know. And I knew we were in the rougher part because the sun hits that side. So every morning, everybody on that side was super sweaty. So that's when I knew I had it rough.
Eva Beach.
Yeah, Eva Beach. Eva Beach.
I remember teaching or doing a workshop in Eva Beach at like 1:00. No one was listening to me.
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Because it was just really hot in a single wall construction. What do you call those? Just
Portable.
Classroom and portables.
Yeah, it was some kind of portable. Yeah.
Lame.
Yeah,
Anyway.
absolutely.
Which brings us to today.
Yeah.
So today it's super, super cool. We have actually guest host and guest. And I don't even know where to begin because our guest today, Jade Wall, we've known her as Jade Fam. Just a remarkable academic journey, KCC alum. But before I even dive any deeper, let's just welcome Jade. And we cut him out just like
Yeah, cut him out. Just that.
But before we have you introduce yourself, Jade, guest host, Dr. Loesch.
What's up,
Dr. Loesch.
Thank you.
We'll explain why Dr. Loesch is here too, because he's going to have a old uncle moment.
Okay.
Am I?
Yes, you
Yeah.
are.
Okay.
But anyway, Jade, if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Jade Wall. I've gone through many names throughout my education. You know, in high school, you might have known me as Yim.
Yes.
Yeah. And then somewhere along the way, I changed my name legally when I became a U.S. citizen with my
Okay.
mom. So that's when I became Jade. And
Oh,
then
okay.
obviously I later got married and my last name changed as well. So I went through several, I guess, identity crises. But, you know, it's more like an evolution of, I think, the person that I grew into and I'm continuing to grow into. So as far as my academic experience, I am a homegrown educator. So I grew up attending Palolo Elementary School, Jarrett Middle, and Kaimuki High School.
All right.
While a student at Kaimuki High, I attended Kapiolani Community College through what was formerly known as the Running Start program, now Early College.
Yep.
From there, I attended Corbin University in the city of Salem, Oregon, where I studied political science. I then moved home to Honolulu and attended UH Manoa for my Master of Education. And currently, I'm continuing my education. I'm working on my PhD in education at UH Manoa, while concurrently working on my second Master's of Educational Leadership at Chaminade University. So I'm kind of all over the place, but you know, I've always considered myself a lifelong learner. So I really do truly enjoy all of my experience in academia. Professionally, I guess I started off my formal career as a special education teacher at my alma mater, Kaimuki High School.
I remember that.
I then transitioned to Kawananakoa Middle School, which is where I am currently. I was an 8th grade social studies teacher before I became a student services coordinator and then later temporarily assigned vice principal. So right now I am in the vice principal certification program. So I don't know what my next school year looks like. You know, the next couple months I will likely be assigned to another school, but that's in the progress. So yeah, that's where I am professionally, kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I'm just sort of like, okay, what did I do today? I woke up and I made a sandwich. But anyway, so this is where I want to introduce our guest host, so Keala. Back in 2013, we had our first KCC course at Kaimuki High School. Jade was in the first class. So you tell us about that, maybe, because here we are in 2025. Here's the old uncle moment.
Oh, man.
We met Jade well, actually, I met Jade in 2012 when she started taking classes with us through Running Start.
Yeah.
And then we started PAX 108 at Kaimuki High School, and that's where you were introduced to Jade. And so tell us a little about yourself, and then now thinking here you had maybe some hand in this future leader.
Okay. Aloha. My name is Keala Lokahi. Sheldon is one of the few people who consistently refers to me as Dr. Loesch, which is, you know, reminds me that I spent a lot of money on my last degree.
Hey, she's doing a PhD.
No, it's a
Yeah.
lot of money. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'm trying to.
No, she knows. She gets it. Let's see. I'm actually a professor. I'm a full professor now in Hawaiian Studies and Pacific Island Studies. My bachelor's and master's are from UH Manoa in Pacific Island Studies. Ended up doing a doctorate in education. So I'm actually an EDD, not a PhD, from USC in educational leadership. But at the time, in fact, at the time that we did early college at Kaimuki, so that was fall of 13, was when
2013.
2013. Yeah, not 1913, thanks.
When Jade was 17. I'm just trying to make you sound old,
Yeah,
that's all.
no,
Yeah, thanks.
actually 16.
Ah,
16,
even more.
yeah.
When I started the
No.
course, but I turned 17. It was my senior year of high school. Yeah.
So I had just started the EDD program at that time. So
Holy
I was
moly.
also a student.
That's crazy.
I started that July. I'd started in the doctoral program. So that was fun. So no, I get you. Like working, teaching, like doing all of it and trying to do a doctorate, and then you're doing another master's. Like, props, total respect. But yeah, so I've been at KCC. Oh, geez. I started in fall of '99, teaching one class part-time, like a week out of my master's program. And then in spring of 2000, I was still a lecturer, sort of on demand, but had a full load. And then spring of 2001, I got hired into a full-time position. So I've been in KCC over 25 years now. That is kind of crazy. And yeah, you reached out one day. It was like, hey, I've got an idea. And Sheldon's that guy. You know, we all have that one friend who goes, hey, so what if?
That's dangerous.
Or they go, you know, it'd be cool.
Yeah, and those conversations
and-
never end well.
And when we're younger, those are normally the guys who get you arrested.
Well,
As we get older, however,
hopefully.
it's interesting. Hopefully that
Hopefully,
changes.
yeah.
And then it leads to some really cool things like early college. So, so the idea was that Kamiki High School, over 50% Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders. Let's use Pacific Island studies as a hook. I mean, who doesn't like to study themselves?
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, thrown in the deep end. Now, the joke at the time that our dean made, who's not here anymore, he's at a different campus, or is he retired?
I don't know.
I was at private school my whole life, from kindergarten all the way through. And so the joke was that by sending me to Kamiki for early college, they were finally getting me to go to public school. You know, but I'll be honest, I mean,
We are nice people.
That was kind of intimidating, right? I mean, you know, there are stories. Like guys coming up to you and wanting to teach you how to fight.
Yeah.
You know, these stories are out there. And so...
So Jay, just so you know, there's this invisible line. So Kamehameha, Damien, Kaimiki Roosevelt.
Yes.
So
Well, that's why you had me sit on this
that's
side of the
right.
table.
Wow.
That's right.
Oh, all right. So, Kamehameha, lower campus number 1, lower campus number 2.
Right, to
Hey,
say-
hey, no,
well,
you
I
know.
say Kamehameha South.
Kamehameha South?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so Jay, you know, when I was doing a little bit of background check on just your accomplishments, I mean, you graduated high school 2014, college 2017, 3 years.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember a conversation. I think you were exiting Kaimiki at that time. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were heading down, looking into being like an advocate for human rights,
Yes.
something along those lines. Like,
Yeah.
talk us through that. You went from that to education. What's that journey like? Because a lot of our students, when they enter college, they have this idea of this is what I want to major in, and then when their mind changes, there's this freak out moment thinking, I can't change my mind, but you can. But anyway, if you could walk us through your journey from where you were when you exited high school to where you're at right now.
Yeah, you know, when I was in high school, I think I had a lot of dreams for my life in terms of, I guess, impacting other people. I had my core values at the time. I hadn't really studied my core values before, but I knew that I wanted to, in some way, make a difference. So that's what led me to human rights. More specifically, I guess, human trafficking or sex trafficking or sexual exploitation of children. That was really where my passions were, and I had done some volunteer work, community service, nonprofit engagement. Throughout my time in college, I also further explored that, especially in the political arena. So I had worked at the Oregon State Capitol, worked on a few campaigns and whatnot, and I was leading, or I guess gearing towards a career in law. So I had studied for the LSAT, planned to go to law school. I think more specifically at Richardson here in Hawaii, I wanted to go back home and make an impact in my community. However, you know, studying political science, I had a lot of, I guess, networking with other attorneys and people in the field of law, and they basically said, don't do it. You want to make a difference, don't do it in law. And I know, there's a lot of different career paths within the legal sector, but just hearing from other people in that field and telling me to not go into it, I feel like that was a really big red flag. And so I thought to myself, where else could I make a difference? And I really reflected on my life. My brain was, I think, expanding with the many experiences I had in college, traveling the world and building relationships with other people. And I thought about my own childhood and where that impact was made. And I really went back to my teachers, throughout my K-12 experience within public schools. The various individuals that impacted me the most were those caring adults, and I wanted to be that caring adult for somebody else. So that's what led me to education. During my last semester of my senior year of college, I reached out to UH Manoa's College of Education and inquired about their Master of Education for dual secondary social studies and special education program. And they fast-tracked me, and I moved back home. I talked to my previous principal, Wade Araki. He hired me immediately as an emergency hire without a certification, and so I started working full-time and going back to school full-time. So I thought it was a really amazing opportunity, and those first 2 years of teaching were so challenging because I was a student, and I really had no idea what I was doing. I remember coming home every day just crying and feeling really overwhelmed and overwhelmed with the public school system now in this other lens of being an adult and feeling that there were so many things that I couldn't change. But as I've, gained experience in that area, I realized that it's the little things that I could do.
But your little things aren't so little, because didn't you even start a esports club at Kawananakoa?
Yeah, that was years later into my career. So we started an esports program with the support of my principal and vice principal. We acquired a lot of funding and equipment and partnered with Olelo, actually, to provide this program for our students. So I really wanted to create a space of belonging for our students who don't necessarily thrive in other traditional curricular programs, extracurricular programs like sports and clubs. So it was definitely just another awesome space for kids to make friends and, play games competitively.
So when you said that, Kumulosha was like, oh. So what type of games are y'all playing in the esports realm?
Yeah, so my favorite game is League of Legends. My current husband, he taught me how to play. So, but actually when I was in middle school, I loved to play video games as well. There was this nonprofit center in Palolo Homes, actually in Palolo Park, called the Mac Center. Mr. Milton, he was the executive director of that program, and I attended that program for 5 to 6 years. And
Wow.
it was really impactful on me too as an adolescent. But I played a lot of games there. But I also learned, had a lot of tutoring, had tutors from KCC as well. So that whole journey was really amazing. But I played Counter-Strike, World of Warcraft, a bunch of other games I can't recall at this point. But
Pac-Man, Donkey Kong?
no.
That's Atari.
I have to ask, race in class in World of Warcraft.
Oh, here we go. We're
Oh,
nerding out.
what
All
was your
right, here we
name?
go.
I can't recall. It was middle school was just so long ago.
It's a blur.
Yes, but our current esports program, we also offer Rocket League, Super Smash Brothers, solo and crew.
These are going way over my head, but okay.
Yeah, and
gotta catch up,
we're
Sheldon.
also a winning team,
Oh. Okay.
first and second place in the state.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Valorant as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Sheldon, anything?
I've-
For Sheldon, it's
But going back to that place of belonging, I think that's really cool. Because the reason why we're referencing middle school in our introduction is I feel like that's such a huge transition period for all youth. And I think much like what you did, I couldn't find a space, and so this space was me getting punched by my classmates. But anyway, we won't go into that. But how did that evolve? I mean, you went from teacher and then VP. That's huge. And so, talk us through that.
Yeah, actually, in between, in my introduction earlier, I shared I was a student services coordinator.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
not many people know what that is, but it's basically a non-classroom teaching position where I coordinate special education and 504 referrals. So students who need additional services and supports within our school, I'm the liaison for specific special providers, whether they're DOE related or private contractors. I bring in those services for students, and I help them with the reports and diagnostics and all of that.
Wow.
So a lot of coordination work, and I feel like within that role, although I was supporting school-wide systems improvement, I wasn't in the classroom anymore impacting kids. So I wanted to find a way to still work with students, so that's why I helped with the esports program. And I also did the Micronesian Culture Club. So another way to, really work with students, whether it's before school, during lunch, or after school. And from there, my principal had asked me about, what my next journey wanted to look like, and I did discuss, a possible transition into school leadership, but I didn't think it would be so soon because I really wanted more experience in, as a teacher, really. But she had asked if I wanted to try this temporarily assigned vice principal position because one of our current VPs was moving on to a principalship, and there was that vacancy. So I told her, sure, I'll try it out. I'm a yes person. I have a really hard time saying no. I've always had a hard time saying no. I always viewed everything as an opportunity for growth. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But it's an opportunity for me to learn something. So I did that, and then she was like, okay, time to apply for the VP program. I said, okay.
I mean, wrap that around your brain.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to be a vice principal for one of the larger middle schools in urban Honolulu? Like,
My answer would be no.
Yeah,
That's why I teach college.
Yeah, no way. Like, middle school is really a unique place.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed teaching high school. So when I got to middle school, I was like, I don't know. I don't even know if I like these kids anymore. Because there was so much learning for them to do.
Yeah.
Not in terms of like academic skills, but like social skills.
Yep.
And somebody had to teach them, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it was me teaching them how to ask for permission and, use their words and make eye contact. So it's a lot of patience. But I really grew to love middle school.
So Jade, I got a question. So I shared this with Kiala and Sheldon earlier. So I'm looking at your grades that you've accumulated through your college grades.
You have my transcript?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. And this is
Explain the F's.
yeah. This is like the easiest eye chart ever because there's only 2 letters on it.
Oh no, there's a couple B's in there.
Yes.
Oh,
that's why.
couple.
Yeah, that's why we're disappointed. No. But you, gosh, amazing. How did you stay like motivated, and how did you get all those letters? that single letter, the A.
Yeah.
And then think about all the things you were doing at that
exactly.
time.
My mindset was always, if you can get a C, you can just work just a little harder, and you'll get a B. If you can get a B, work just a little harder.
I feel like
you
she's
can get an
talking
A.
to us like her middle school.
Yeah, a little, because, I don't think grades are really a measure of intelligence at all. That's my personal perspective as an educator. I think grades are really a measure of effort and hard work and, perseverance and attention to detail. It's really a measure of, how bad do you want it? It's that grit for me. So I knew that I wanted an A. I don't know why. Maybe it was try to help my self-esteem in some way. But man, I do remember that first B
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
on there. It was from Psych 100. I was telling Sheldon on the way up to the library, I remember taking a nap in the library before I went to my Psych 100 class. Because that style of teaching was different from what I was used to. It was
Yeah.
very lecture-based. It was, here's the slides, take your notes, and we got some couple exams along the way. And for me, I think I took that class as a sophomore or a junior in high school. So
Yeah.
I didn't really have, through the Running Start program, I didn't really
Yeah.
have the study skills yet. So I remember just sitting there like typing all my notes as, on my computer and then trying to study my way through it. And it was all new concepts for me. So I knew, at this point, I could only do as much as I could. And so I got that B. I learned to be okay with it.
To be okay with that. That's
Yeah,
totally fine.
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But so it's just a lot of really neat things when I was reading through your bio. So if we like fast forward to 2024, and just hearing all your stories and how you always put yourself out there, there's this thing called the Milken Award. And for those who are listening, like all two listeners out there, it's a pretty remarkable award for educators, if I'm not mistaken. Those who are selected for the Milken Award don't even know that they were put in the running. Words that came up when I was looking at what criteria falls under this Milken Award, it's exceptional educational talent. The word innovation came up. Leadership beyond the classroom, engaging and inspiring. And so when I listened to just briefly all your accomplishments in this interview so far, I mean, that checks all the boxes. When you got your Milken Award, or when you got the notice saying, hey, by the way, you were nominated, talk to us about that, because this is amazing.
Yeah. So I was notified at a surprise assembly with pretty much most of my schools, including students and staff, and my school leadership. I think superintendent and governor were also there. So,
Wow.
I knew something was happening, but I didn't really know what or for whom, right? So it was a surprise assembly, and honestly, it was a very overwhelming experience. It wasn't a positive overwhelming either. I think afterward I did more. I'm a big thinker. I'm an overthinker. I do a lot of reflection, and I felt this huge imposter syndrome come over me because I felt like I'm still I consider myself an early career educator, or maybe mid, I guess, at this point. But I felt like, there's so many awesome teachers around me that are deserving of this. Why me? And when the kids come up to me like, why'd you get this award? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, can I have $1,000? I'm like, yeah, sure. No, you cannot, because it was a monetary award as well.
Yeah, I saw that.
So, while it was overwhelming, I was very thankful, to be recognized and that people saw my hard work. I just felt like, we all work hard. I think we all deserve recognition in some way, and I'm still thankful to have been, I guess, elevated in that way.
So with all these, I don't even know how to phrase it, because going back to you being back, lack for a better term, in the front lines in middle school with all these young minds still trying to figure stuff out, and you saying you're a deep thinker and all that, what are some of the top issues you feel middle school students are facing, and what are some of your solutions? I was at Jared Middle last night, and we were talking with some of their student services folks. It was one of those parent community meetings. We met with the principal. And I love going to those meetings because it's a reminder of just the development of youth and the kind of changes they're going through. So in your mind, in your experience as a teacher, esports person, student, support services, VP, from what you've witnessed, what are some of your solutions if you had a magic wand?
Oh, that's a big one. Going back to the biggest issue, I think students in middle school lack the social, emotional learning skills. For us, going back to middle school, we're kind of in our own bubble, right? We don't know what the heck is going on with ourselves, with others, with our parents, our families, our teachers, right? It's just a time of confusion and discovery, and some kids make it out better than others, and some kids just don't. So I feel like the self-awareness and social awareness, that sense of belonging is a huge area of need. And so for me, if I had a magic wand, I would want every child to know that they're loved. Yeah, I think that's super important for me, and whatever role that I am in, within education, I think going back to love is really important. I know that word can be uncomfortable for some people, I guess, who grow up in families where, that's not as, I guess, publicly shown, right? Because a lot of our families from Pacific Islander or Asian backgrounds, it's not very outward. But I think a lot of our kids crave that. And, I don't tell my students, hey, I love you all the time, but I show them in many different ways, whether that's through words of encouragement or through, acts of service. We're just being there for them. A lot of these kids that come to my office as an administrator now, they're here because they're in trouble. They did something bad. They made a bad choice, but, I always try to help them to learn that this is just a choice that they made. It's not a defining element of their character. They're not bad kids. Right. But, if they, throughout their adolescence, they hear enough times that, you're a bad kid or you're not enough, they're going to grow into that. They're going to become what they've been told. So I try to reverse that narrative. There are, a lot of caring adults out there, but, honestly, there are also non-caring adults. So I try to be that for them. So that's my magic wand.
So as a VP, it's not like, especially with your married name now, like, they get in trouble. It's like, oh, you got to face the wall.
Well, Wall hasn't stuck yet. They still call me Miss Fam.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes the kids are like, it's Miss Wall. Stop calling her Miss Fam. I'm like, either's fine.
Sorry, you set that up, by the way. You made me old uncle. You get dad jokes.
Hey, but there's still the joke with fam, the lingo fam. Hey, what's up, fam?
Yeah, fam.
Like family?
Family.
Yeah. Sheldon.
So they do that.
All right.
It's funny. Sheldon made it out like I was the old uncle. That makes Sheldon like grandpa. Like just oblivious.
Well, fam is kind of old. It's kind of out now. It's not really in anymore with the Gen Alphas.
No.
No, you don't get to claim that Gen Alpha. We're the same age, Sheldon.
No, I laugh because I did a presentation at Moana Middle a couple weeks ago, and not only did I feel old, what was cool is the students were teaching me stuff. And so I was supposed to be there doing this college and career thing, but I spent 3 hours learning from them. So they did most of the talking. I sat there and listened. So I think
You're cool now.
What's one word you learned
Oh boy.
from that 3-hour conversation?
Uh-oh.
my God, I didn't learn anything. Because much like middle schoolers, well, I shouldn't say that. I wasn't really paying attention. I was paying attention. I was more focused on, oh my gosh, you guys are so super busy. And so when I was asking them, so the 3 prompts I gave them were what's important to you, how did you get there, what kind of sacrifices did you make? And that's where I learned that multiple sports, they're doing extracurricular activities. And one student said, I have to study in the gym before I go to my next game. I have to carve time to even talk to friends. And I'm like, how many hours a day do you guys sleep? And they kind of share with me. I was like, oh my God. It was just me just asking other questions. And then I asked them, if you had to maybe give up going on your phones for 2 days, like what would that look like? Oh, they went nuts. We can't do that. But it was just a real neat, real life lesson for me. And I was supposed to talk about KCC because it was these 3 groups and had 25 minutes each. I didn't talk about KCC at all. It's almost like I'm going to get into trouble, but it was more talking about how they navigated through life as a 12 and 13-year-old. And that helped me understand how we help our students today.
Yeah. And, I think the middle school experience definitely varies for, the demographics. So, for kids who are traditionally involved in a lot of extracurricular activities like sports and whatnot, and having to balance all that. That's amazing because they're developing these skills early on in life, but it can be very overwhelming, right?
Yep.
But for me, a lot of the kids I work with, and a lot of the schools in, let's say, Honolulu, we have students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, so they don't necessarily have the access or the
Right.
opportunities
Right.
to these programs that would otherwise develop them more holistically. A lot of our kids deal with complex trauma and issues at home, and so school is really that one safe place where they're trying to find a sense of belonging. So it's so awesome that a lot of our public schools are now providing these programs that are, at no cost and provides transportation and funding and all of that for our kids to participate in. So, yeah, the school experience varies
Yeah.
for sure.
So you mentioned Pacific Islanders. I want to rope in Keala, and so we have a leadership in the middle schools working with Pacific Islander students. You teach Pacific Island studies. Now, hearing what she's sharing, what are you seeing in the classrooms?
Wow, I mean, it actually varies by school, right? I mean, so in addition to Kaimaki, we started at Kaimaki, and then later Sheldon decided to use me as a guinea pig at Radford. That's what he does. Like, again, it's, hey, it'd be cool.
Does that to me too.
Yeah,
Hey,
right.
let's do a podcast.
So that's the running
And then
joke.
there's Russell.
Just Russ.
That's the running joke is I'm Sheldon's guinea pig, but he's my agent. He gets me gigs. But I think, when I look at, say, the Pacific Island population at Kaimaki versus the Pacific Islanders at Radford, there's a difference, right? And part of that is the larger school environment, right? So it's not, you can't just focus on that particular demographic. The context matters, right? The peer groups matter, right? And so with a place like Radford, with such a significant military-dependent population, well, that culture, I think, has a huge influence, right? Was it 60% of the students at Radford, I think, are military
I
dependent?
believe so. Yep.
So that influences the context within which these Pacific Island students are operating. Now, what's interesting there is we've now had 2 students, they're sisters, in fact, who were tokelauan and were student body president, right? Consecutive, that were in the program. So there you see these Pacific Island students getting into leadership big time, right? And even now there's this last year was a Marshallese young woman who is in leadership at Radford. Kaimuki, I don't get that, right? It's a completely different feel in the room. If you know what to look for, the leadership potential is there, right? But it doesn't seem to automatically manifest the way that I see it at Radford, right? And so I think that's probably my biggest caution over time. And this was something that, even within the Hawaiian community, it's not monolithic. Context matters. District matters. The faculty matter. Like, how many other faculty and staff are on that campus from that group? Beyond the stereotype of, but security is going to be Pacific Islander, which is pretty true. I mean, there's a reason the stereotype exists, but if that's it, that makes a difference. Yeah. So the other thing, with Pacific Island studies and Pacific Islander students in Pacific Island studies is that a lot of these students don't identify as Pacific Islander. They identify as their island, right? Even, when we talk about Micronesian, well, there's the Federated States of Micronesia as a country, Micronesian, and then there's the Micronesia region compared to Polynesia and Melanesia. Rarely do I have a student who's going to identify as Pacific Islander or even as Micronesian from the region. It's Chamorro, Palauan, Marshallese, Kiribati, so on. Micronesian in that case is FSM. And even within that group, it's which of the 4 states, right? And so it's the Chukis, it's the Kosraean, it's the Pohnpeian, and the Yapese. And they're very clear, right, which state they're from. And they do not want to be confused with each other, So one of the challenges in Pacific Island Studies is actually trying to build bridges between the islands so that the students start to have a sense of cohesiveness to say, well, we're all islanders, right? And that if they can get that sense of unity, I think that actually is a huge piece.
Well, Jay brings up the term belonging like a lot. So from what you're seeing, I don't know if majority of your students are first gen or second gen, but are you seeing that where definite pride in where they're home, but are you seeing this not lack of a bridge, but maybe folks not being able to connect?
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, at my school, we have a larger Chukis and Marshallese population, and they're distinct languages, right?
Yeah.
So these kids, they tend to, and I think today is a lot different than it was when I was in school. Back then, kids really hung out with really their own ethnic group. Like I remember at Kapiolani High School, I'm Vietnamese, my friends are all Vietnamese girls. So, we connected that way automatically, really. There was nobody told us to go be friends. It just, I just looked for people that looked like me and sounded like me. And, that was the same for the Filipino kids at our school, or the Micronesian kids, or the Samoan kids, right? It was kind of like an automatic gravitation. However, what I'm seeing in schools these days is they're very blended. So especially middle school, I'll look at a 6th grade peer group, and they're all like, a really great representation of what exists in Hawaii, and they're all friends. And it didn't exist when I was in school. However, all that to say, I do agree with Keala that the kids have some sort of understanding of their own group as well as another group, and it's not always so positive. So that's really interesting, especially within my Micronesian Culture Club. But also within the greater community in Hawaii, there's that lack of understanding of what Keala was talking about. Not many people know that there's such diversity within the Pacific. They lump together as Micronesian peoples are one people, and then they stick with the stereotype that exists for them. And unfortunately, a lot of our educators also carry that mindset. So it's really important that the people that we have in the classrooms have that knowledge, the skills, the professional development to work with our diverse youth.
Well, when students apply to the University of Hawaii, there's one category, Micronesian. And I think depending on which app you use, it kind of breaks it down, but not really. Because that'll be just kind of a long subcategory, but you're right. I mean, we're on this research group together.
Yeah, it's interesting. The choices that are made by, for lack of a better word, bureaucracies, right? Whether that's, education institutions or U.S. Census Bureau. I mean, then you get some weird categories like Chamorro/Guamanian, and it's going, what does that mean? And again, there are specific histories involved to understand. People go, oh, you're from Guam, you're Guamanian, and yet if somebody's Chamorro, they're going to correct you. Like, they're going to come, no, I'm Chamorro. Like, we're like the Aboriginal people of Guam. Like, stop. Guamanians are people who came in after. So it gets touchy at times. And I guess one of my questions, I'm kind of curious with the blending that you're seeing, is that somehow they're more open, or is it that there's maybe a higher degree of assimilation into the mainstream, right? Because I mean, at one point, like, there was this sort of maintenance of that cultural identity versus sort of succumbing, loaded word, but succumbing to the assimilation into sort of mainstream, whether that's local or mainstream American society, and that's why they're blending. Like, because what we see increasingly now are maybe second, third, sometimes even fourth generation islanders who are coming to Pacific Island Studies because they were disconnected. And so they're coming to the field of study to reconnect as islanders. And so in that case, I would absolutely assume that they're going to have these diverse peer groups because they're not really connected to the island culture necessarily. Even sometimes they're living in the community, but they're not identifying that way anymore. It's, oh no, but I'm part of the mainstream. I don't know, is that?
Yeah, I definitely think that it is, to a degree, assimilation. A lot of the students that I'm seeing who are in blended peer groups are second generation. So they're born here in Hawaii, but they have parents who came from the Pacific Islands, and they're dual language, right? They speak their home language, but they also speak English very fluently, and they're either at or above grade level for academic skills. So a lot of these kids now, they're no longer, I guess, in that stereotype where they're having a harder time learning because of the language or because of the I guess complex issues that come with migration, right?
Someone told me it's the 1.5 generation. Like that term got kicked around. They're in between. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, then I also wonder off of that then how much, because it seems like there's a generational difference, how much of that is because of, say, social media, right? That these younger students now, it's maybe they're not, maybe the mainstream culture they're assimilating into is not specifically local or even American. It's this sort of global social media culture that's actually what they've all assimilated into, and that's why they blend.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I mean, it's just, this is the academic coming out.
Yeah, you really got to study those middle school minds. I couldn't answer that.
That's scary.
Yeah.
The thought of that is scary to me.
I try not to group so much in my head when I think of my kids, right? I really think of them as individuals and their holistic development. So I think each kid varies so much, and you learn about their parents and what their parents do and how engaged their parents are. I think that's really important to their development. So I have one kid, and from a Pacific Islander background, and I see her parent coming to our parent engagement nights, and I think, wow, that's so amazing, because we don't have that much Pacific Islander representation at what are traditionally geared towards parents who are always going to come to school events anyways, right? So I love seeing that involvement and engagement from parents.
So you did give us your magic wand scenario, but let's fast forward. So you're done with your PhD, you're solid in your leadership position. What is like your 5-year plan?
Oh my God, wow. Sheldon.
Oh, funny, because I do make 10-year plans.
Oh, see.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I got my running notes in my my iPhone, and I always add every year when it completes. But no, that's really looking ahead, because I think I've finally come to a point in my life where I realize I can't always plan things out. Because I guess I don't have kids yet. This year I'm 29.
You've accomplished all this anyway.
That's a little old for me, honestly. I'm like, oh no.
Hey now.
I'm hitting my 30s soon. I don't have children.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad. It's
Yeah.
not that bad.
But I feel like when you throw, children into the mix like your own, it really changes everything up. So I realized that as much as I want to plan when I'll get pregnant, when I'll give birth to my first, yep, I got that. I penciled that in there.
Oh my
But
gosh.
now I'm starting to put question marks next to all of them, because I'm like, I can't do all these things at once. Like my PhD advisor said, Jade, you can only pick 2. You can't do the 5 things you have that you want, because eventually you're gonna burn out, which I definitely understand. So I guess as far as my 5 years after my PhD, I think I want to become a school principal and be able to help with improving the systems at a specific school. I really don't know what school I'll be at, but I've always been a product of Title I schools, which are schools that where at least 50% of the population receive free or reduced lunch.
Right.
And I've always worked at Title I schools, so I feel like, that's where I belong. I want to be someone who improves schools for kids who traditionally don't have the access to the opportunities.
So I have a question. So we have all these lists of accomplishments, and you're 29, and you feel old.
Yes, very old, very old.
My lower back.
I know, right?
My lower back.
My
is,
back
oh.
too, my back
Oh,
too.
oh, okay,
Oh,
whatever.
right.
So my question is for Kiala Kumalosh. What were your first impressions of her when she walked into the classroom?
I don't think you remember, do you?
Oh, I do.
Was she the one kicking the chair down and like throwing stuff at you? Oh no, that was me. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was on the skateboard.
She's the one who was laser focused from the get-go.
She had her list.
I mean, you were so clear about your goals. Like, and so I'm glad. If Sheldon hadn't asked, I would have, because you were very clear at the time that FBI, right?
Oh my goodness.
You were gonna be an agent.
Yeah,
And you were gonna be hands-on.
I don't know how you remember that, because now you brought it up. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're right. There was a time.
Yeah, no, because it was so crystal clear, and there was something in the way you spoke about it that was like, it was gonna happen. Like there was just this level of drive, of motivation that was unusual, right? And so yeah, it was, and it wasn't just I want to be an FBI agent. It was FBI agent, human trafficking. I'm gonna get those mofo's. Like,
Yeah, something like
it
that.
was like the way you spoke about it. I'm like,
We talked about that in
She's-
class.
she's gonna stop human trafficking around the planet.
That's Yeah. right.
Like this woman is absolutely going to do that, right? And so that's the thing. I mean, it was this laser focus. There was no doubt. It wasn't, well, I've been thinking, and this might be a cool thing to do. No, it's I'm doing this, and nothing is gonna stop me. Until apparently lawyers say don't do it. But no, I think that was probably one of my first impressions. You just kind of gave off this energy that was like, no, I am driven. I will succeed. I will accomplish. Period.
Yeah.
There's no ambiguity here. There's no doubt. There's just drive.
Yeah. And I think I still have that, definitely.
No,
like
it sounds
for
like
me,
it.
if I set something as my goal or my dream, like I'm gonna do it. Like if I work just a little harder, I can get there.
I do kind of feel for the children you're gonna have.
Oh my goodness.
Because you're gonna be like, you're going to Stanford. And
Yeah,
they're gonna go.
Because Mama didn't go, so you gotta go. I know. Feel bad for my husband. He's not like me at all. He's super chill. He actually went to KCC, and then dropped out.
We need to talk to
Yeah,
him.
we have to, he's the next guest.
He needs to come to us.
Yeah.
But it's going to be one of those things where her future the children or whatever, and they're going to be like, Mom, I cleaned up my room. And she's going to say stuff like, do you think that's clean enough? Did you do your best? And it's going to be like, huh.
Yeah, she's not gonna scold them.
No.
She's gonna question them.
Yeah.
The
I'm
agent
very-
guilt.
I'm very disappointed. In
I
you,
bet.
you know,
Oh my God.
I get a lot of practice being a teacher and a school administrator. I'm learning about what type of style I have with
Yeah.
coaching and parenting too. So,
Yeah.
and I hope I'm not going to be a toxic mom, right? So I'm really reflecting on that. How do I nurture these skills?
Yeah.
Be the type of parent that I wanted, and
So I'm smiling because I'm trying to envision this in esports. Is that the best you can do in Valorant? Really?
Like, I know you like that particular character, but is that
Is that the
best
right
for the team? I mean, don't you feel like maybe there's a gap in the team that needs to be filled?
well, actually,
Oh my
Oh,
God.
there you go.
I don't do that.
Okay.
I actually use a lot of peer mentoring.
Yeah.
That's kind of my approach. Be like, hey,
Alright,
so
See,
and so.
and that's how she's better than us.
Yes, she keeps the Asian guild at the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She teaches others to do it.
Oh, the other thing I remember is that she passed the map test and you didn't.
Oh, damn.
So you remember the map test? Does that stand out at all, the map test?
Possibly.
He hasn't passed it yet.
Oh.
3 times.
Did you study?
What is that?
And that's why.
I felt like he gave me the sheet with dots on it, and I thought, give me a cleaner sheet of paper. He said, that's the map test. I'm like, oh, boy. Anyway, yeah. Didn't pass it. But anyway, so sorry, totally off tangent. So if there's any final words you'd like to tell our listeners about just anything at all, words of wisdom, like what you've seen in life, anything to share.
Yeah, I guess the first thought that came to my mind is that we really need to invest in public education. As much as we think that we are, all of our issues I see in our communities is due to the lack of investment in public education. That's not just fiscally, that's physically, emotionally. So for me, I'm very passionate about that. We have a critical teacher shortage, and we really need to fill our classrooms with qualified, caring, ethical adults. And so I think if we can accomplish that, if we can train our kids to grow up and want to become teachers, that's going to be really transformational for Hawaii. I always tell my kids to grow up and become a teacher. Because when I first started teaching, I remember at my alma mater, all my teachers were like, what? What are you doing here? I thought you were going to go to law school. I was like, they told me not to do that. And then they were like, well, we're telling you now, don't do this either. Like, what are you doing? Don't become a teacher. So I was like, oh my God, then what do I do in life? Everyone is telling me to not do this. So I just decided I'm doing this for myself, no matter what anybody says, right? And for me, especially with our underrepresented populations, I tell them to grow up and become the person that you wanted to be your role model in life. A lot of our kids want to see someone up there that looks like them, that sounds like them, and they need that. And I think that you would be an awesome individual in that position. So I really try to plant that seed early on, so when kids are starting to think about what they want to do when they grow up, they can view education as a very honorable and rewarding profession. And I think we need to reward our educators in that way as well.
I want to become a teacher now.
And I think you are an educator. You're making a difference in the field of education, and you don't need to be in the classroom to do that. There are various points in people's lives or kids' lives that you can make a difference. And for what you do with the early college and what you guys are doing within the UH system is really impactful. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. And then it's just a shout out to all the other folks in service industries and just expanding that definition of teaching. Because I think there are folks who say, well, I got my degree in this, I can't teach. But that doesn't stop them from teaching.
Yeah, or even having partnerships with public schools, right? Like, being an educator is not just teaching. It's a philosophy that you are educating and that you are transferring your knowledge and skills and talents to the next generation. So you can be a banker and still be an educator, right? What are you doing to support the school in your community?
Another wonderful day. Wonderful interview. Thank you. Soon to be Dr. Jade.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us. And just for reference, being 30 is not old. As the 2 oldest people in this room.
I will say, be prepared to revisit all of your goals once you have that first child.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, I thought I wanted to go into administration as well. And now I'm very glad I didn't.
Yeah.
At the time, my eldest just graduated high school last week. And so that's one down, one to go. Maybe once the second one graduates, I might consider making a move to admin. But that's probably more about making more money to pay for college. Which is the other thing. I think, I think what you've done so far has been fantastic because
Amazing.
it's the passion driving you. It's that purpose that is driving you. It's not the money. It's not the prestige. It's genuine, and I think it's authentic, and that's ultimately what makes you the most effective in any job you do is when it's authentic. And so, yeah, kudos to you for that. Just keeping it real the whole time. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Belonging and love. That's the two words. Right.
Yep.
Thank you. All right.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, we just do that.